All right, let's dive into Google Pub Sub. It's one of those services that works quietly in the background, but it's basically the secret nervous system for some of the biggest applications on the planet. By the time we're done here, you'll see why it's such a critical part of modern cloud infrastructure.
So let's just start with a question to frame this. I mean, think about the massive scale of Google, right? Services like Gmail and YouTube are dealing with this just unimaginable flood of events happening every single second. How on earth do they manage that constant, gigantic flow of information without just grinding to a halt?
Well, the answer is actually pretty clever. Instead of having every little piece of the system talk directly to every other piece, they use a completely different model. They subscribe. And that one little shift in thinking, well, that's what makes everything else possible. To really get why that subscribe idea is such a game changer, we first need to look at the problem it was designed to solve. And that problem is what I like to call the typical app communication mess.
Think about it. In the systems you've built or worked on, when one part of an app needs to tell another part something, how does it usually happen? Yeah, more often than not, it's just a direct point-to-point connection.
And that's fine when you have 2 or 3 services. But when you have dozens or even hundreds of microservices, you end up with this tangled spaghetti architecture. Everything is tightly wired together. So if one service slows down, or you need to update it, boom, you can trigger a whole chain reaction of failures. It's brittle, it's complicated, and it is a nightmare to scale.
So how do you untangle all that spaghetti? This is exactly where the publish-subscribe model, or Pub Sub, comes in. It's a totally different way for our apps to think about communication.
And this visual just shows it perfectly. On the left, you've got the old way, that chaotic spiderweb of direct connections we just talked about. And on the right, that's the Pub Sub way. Instead of chaos, you have this central, organized hub that acts as the connective tissue for your whole system. Services stop talking to each other and instead start talking through the hub.
So here's the magic trick. Publishers, the ones sending the information, they don't need to know who's listening. They don't care. They just publish a message to a specific topic. Think of a topic like a category in a magazine, sports or tech news. Then, any number of subscribers, the receivers, can say, hey, I'm interested in that topic, and they get their own copy of the message. The subscriber never knows the original writer, and the writer never knows the subscribers. This decoupling is everything.
So that's the big idea. Now let's follow a single message on its journey to see how this actually works under the hood in Google Pub Sub.
Okay, so picture this. First, a publisher, let's say it's an e-commerce service, sends a message to a topic called New Orders. That topic then acts like a distribution center. It takes that one single message and immediately fans it out, making a copy for every single subscription that's listening. Now, a subscription is just a downstream service saying, I'm interested. So the inventory service, the shipping service, and the analytics dashboard, they each get their own copy of that New Orders message to work on, all at the same time and completely independently. And subscribers get to choose how they get these messages. With a pull subscription, the app basically pulls Pub Sub, asking, hey, got anything new for me? Anything now? This is awesome for batch jobs that process things at their own pace. Then you have push subscriptions, where Pub Sub actively sends or pushes the message to the subscriber's web address the instant it arrives. This is perfect for things like serverless functions that need to react immediately. It's all about giving you flexibility. So, now that we know how it works, let's get to the fun part. Let's talk about what makes Pub Sub so incredibly powerful. Let's look at its superpowers. First off, the scale is just mind-boggling. Pub Sub was born inside Google, so it was built from day one to handle millions of messages per second. And the best part? It all scales automatically. You don't have to provision servers. You don't have to guess capacity. A sudden traffic spike? It just handles it. Second, it's not just big, it's a true global service. Your data is automatically copied and stored across multiple data centers around the world. What does that mean for you? It means it's incredibly durable. Your messages aren't going to get lost, and you get super low latency whether your apps are running in the same city or on opposite sides of the planet.
Now, this is a really important point for any developer using this. Pub Sub guarantees at least once delivery. That means it will bend over backwards to make sure your message gets delivered. But sometimes, maybe because of a network hiccup, that might mean sending it more than once. So your application has to be designed to be idempotent, which is just a fancy way of saying that processing the same message twice won't cause any problems.
Okay, enough theory. We've covered the what and the how. Now let's see how this all comes together in real-world solutions that companies are building every single day.
I mean, just look at this table. The use cases are all over the map. For microservices, it lets different teams work on their own services without breaking everybody else's. For real-time analytics, it's the main artery pumping live data into dashboards. For the Internet of Things, it can reliably drink from the fire hose of data coming from millions of tiny devices. And for something like log aggregation, it just centralizes everything into one clean stream. It is a true Swiss Army knife.
And really, this quote just nails it. The absolute core value is that by decoupling everything, by separating the sender from the receiver, you get the flexibility and the resilience that you absolutely need for modern apps. Apps that have to change, scale, and survive failures. So, it leaves you with a final thought. When your systems are no longer a tangled mess, but a flexible, event-driven network, what does that make possible? What could you build if your applications could react to anything, anywhere, instantly? That's the power of Google Pub Sub. Thanks for watching.